Bienvenidos. This is the Paseo podcast. My name is Joshua Smyser-DeLeon. Thank you for listening to this. Thank you for watching this. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, we are here for Josue. What is this? The third in-person interview we've done, right? Since the pandemic? Second. Third, right? Yeah. So we had Puerto Rican cakes. We did Honeycomb Network. And then now, today, we're at Casa Yari's with Yari herself, Yari Vargas. She's just a recap if people don't know what Casa Yari is. It is a Puerto Rican and Honduran restaurant. So we got a nice little fusion going on. We're in your home away from home.
Yeah.
Yari, tell us a little bit about yourself. What should our audience know about you?
Well, I am half Puerto Rican and half Honduran. My dad is from Honduras and my mom is from Puerto Rico. And my mom is actually from Yaris, Puerto Rico. We were just celebrating not too long ago El Grito de Yaris. Basically, I grew up in a home where food was everything, and my mom did her thing, my dad did his, and we put everything in one plate. So that's where the whole restaurant came about, with putting everything together as a fusion, and it worked.
Yeah, no, it definitely works. I mean, I was telling you before, and it wasn't just to get free food, but I was telling you, Yari, that my wife and I had the chance to come here during the pandemic. We were sitting outside in the patio space, and I had one of the best jibaritos I ever had in my life. It was so good.
Awesome.
We're dying to come back. I know you have a brunch menu now, so we're definitely gonna jump in there. But even like going back to like other people I've talked to in the Puerto Rican community, past guests we've had on the show. Last season, we asked them, what's your favorite spot to eat Puerto Rican food? Wherever they were at. We interview a lot of Boricuas from Chicago, and they would say, Casa Yari. Hands down, no hesitation. Wow. So I was like, we got to go to this woman's crib. We got to go to her spot and check it out. So you were gracious enough for people watching us on YouTube. You're gracious enough to make us some baccalaitos.
Yeah, they're actually vegan.
Vegan baccalaitos. So tell us, so what makes these vegan? What's different about these than the traditional baccalaitos?
So baccalaito obviously is made out of flour, but you add in codfish shredded and put it in the batter to do the baccalaitos. But obviously, because it's fish, there shouldn't be no animal product when there is vegan option. We use banana blossom, which gives it that flakiness and it shreds up just like a bacalao. And I add nori sheets to give the seafood flavor. That's what makes them vegan, that they actually have no animal product, but tastes like it does, and it has a texture like it does.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was watching you cook in the back. I was like, man, these kind of look like tostones a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they just look unique. They look delicious. I can't wait to try some. Josue already beat me to it. You can't see him. He's off camera chowing down some. It seems like you're really intentional with the dishes that you make.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I definitely want to ask you more questions deeper into the interview, but tell us a little bit about why you make, you're so intentional with healthier food options.
Well, especially in the vegan community, there's a lot of soy allergies because, when you eat too much of something, it happens, and some others are just born with it, it is what it is. Because of that, I've learned to kind of like maneuver certain things. So sauces, I do them automatically vegan and automatically soy-free. For that reason, because it's more easier and more practical when you're running a restaurant to have like 20 bottles of different kinds of sauces, like soy-free this, soy that, or, it doesn't make sense to do that. So I just by default already do soy-free, and by default already do it vegan. If the option is with meat, then I add in whatever product I need to add in to make it, non-vegan. But other than that, I do it on purpose because, allergies are a serious effect here, and especially in our community. We'd be surprised.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and when you look at your menu, it's interesting because there's not a lot of places that I've been to that switch up their menu almost regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how frequently do you switch up your menu?
I do it every week.
Okay. That's such a rapid clip.
Yeah.
And so you're switching out your menu every week, and you always have a number of healthy options. Like I remember one time I came, you had keto friendly options. Yes. You still have keto friendly options, right? So you're having the vegan options. Like it's just really cool. So really happy that you made this for us. I mean, you gave me a Malta India for people watching.
Yeah,
Malta sponsor our podcast because we love it. This takes me back to my childhood. So anytime I can like scarf down a Malta India, I always appreciate it.
And it
So
goes
thank you.
well with baccalaitos. It's just a right combination.
Yes. So I'm gonna ask you a longer question so I can try one as you answer. When people come into Casa Yari, what can people expect when they walk through your doors?
I always tell people maybe what not to expect in the sense of like we're not typical fast food where you're gonna see a little vitrinita with the sorullito alcapurrias on there. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not what my space is about. It's more about serving more of the food that we traditionally kind of like forgot about, food that it's good, comfort food. Growing up, piñón, which is pastelón, that a lot of people call it pastelón, but in Puerto Rico it's piñón. My mom will make that not very often. It was usually when she had a little extra money, she would make it. And it was like, oh my God, we were getting so hyped up over a piñón, but it was just one of those things. Alcapurria was something that was cheap. It was easy for $1. Go to the park, get it. It was one of those memories you kind of like collect, right? But when I did the restaurant, I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do stuff that I actually got excited when I was a kid and connect with my people that way. I always say food has a way of speaking to you without language, without words, So it was very important for me to make sure that that's what I bring here. Good food, quality food, fresh food, which is why I change my menu every week. So it's not like I'm going to have something old carrying it for the following week. It's not going to happen. And I go on purpose grocery shopping. I go with my partner, with Hector, and we actually go look at the product, smell the product, go straight to the vendors. We have, because I support other local vendors as well, and we go directly to them to get the products, that we use here for everybody. So yeah, when you come here, you have to expect quality, good food, art, because I am obsessed with art. Which is why I cook, and I just love to put all that art all on top of that plate and have you just look at it with your eyes, eat with your eyes, and then after you eat with your eyes, devour, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I want you to expect, to have a good time.
Well, I just devoured that baccalito as best I could. My wife says I chew like a cow.
But and I still heard you crunch.
Richie, our audio editor, is gonna.
It made me feel proud because I was like, yes, it crunch.
No, beautiful crunch. I mean, you almost can't tell it's vegan.
No, I know it's crazy.
I think I only can tell because I know it's.
Yeah.
It's how you make it. I was like, So you touched on this a little bit though. Food industry, opening up your own restaurant. I mean, you got your Honduran identity, you got your Puerto Rican identity. Grew up having both traditions represented on your plate at home. Why did you want to bring that to the general public? Why enter the food industry?
So before opening the restaurant, I actually was working in a commercial kitchen. And one of my biggest, I guess, frustration, I should say, when I would bring up menu ideas, because we always had like to do these catering, these big old elegant caterings. And it was always like certain typical foods, like maybe Italian or French cooking. It was always that kind of food. If they ever hit Latino, it would be Mexican, but it was more Americanized Mexican food. So I was a little frustrated as a chef because it's like, well, can we cook this? Can we do that? Like, I would come up with pollo en fricassé and they will look at me like, oh, no, we're not putting that there. Like it wasn't like if the food wasn't good enough. Like we couldn't elevate it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So to me, it was very frustrating. Like it was just too much. And that's why I was like, you know what? I really need to open a location where I can serve the food I grew up with. And I really had to sit there and think a lot of things through in the sense of like, how do I elevate it? Because we're used to going to any restaurant, Puerto Rican food specifically, where it's fast food. which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes you want it, something quick, easy, you go there, but I wanted to shift away from that.
Mm-hmm.
We had too many of those here, and I wanted to shift away from that.
Yeah.
I didn't want just the vitén cebollado y arroz blanco, plátano maduro. I mean, for me, I felt like, something you could cook at home.
Mm-hmm.
Chuleta frita, rice and beans, stuff you could cook at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very big on go out to eat food that you can't cook at home because you're spending the money. So I was like, how do I get to that level, And I had to really like dig into the culture, like, big time. I had to like sit with my mom. I had to sit with my dad because again, I had to have both cultures. I had to represent. It's hard to represent one, imagine two. So, I had to make sure I wasn't disrespecting one over the other or choosing more one over the other. And I had to also keep in mind that I was born and raised in Chicago. So how do I showcase all that into one? So it was a lot of sitting down, a lot of meditation, a lot of praying, a lot of like writing down. Oh my God, I cooked and tested product like crazy, but I wanted it to make it, like I said, mofongo is one of them. Like, I didn't want the typical ball and the caldo and the meat there and the piece of lettuce and tomato. Like that was like, it's fine, but we need to shift away from that because again, that's the reason why when I was working in these companies, they didn't want those food because it didn't look nice. It didn't look appropriate, but the flavor was amazing. So how do I put all that into one? How do I make it look beautiful? How do I make it look, and that you don't sacrifice the flavors? So I'm more of like, traditional flavors, I'm all for it. But traditional look and style, I'm against it. Like we need to elevate, we need to evolve. And sometimes people are scared of changes. And I'm not scared of changes. I love the challenge and I take on to it, that like excites me. And that's why I'm like, being a chef is like the reason why, it's like that adrenaline.
That's interesting. I told you earlier that when we asked people what's their favorite Puerto Rican joint to go eat at in Chicago, your name comes up, but I'd say a close second is my mom's house. Not my mom specifically, but people will say like my mom's cooking.
Yeah.
So I really like that point you made where it's like, you want to create an experience where it's not something you can get anywhere else.
Right.
Like you want vegan style baccalaitos. You're probably not going to get that at home. Probably a 99% chance you're not going to get that at home. I loved your point about tomates y lechuga on the side of the dish because I don't know why that became the go-to Puerto Rican salad. Throw some onions in there. It's like, oh man, it wasn't until you think about it, like growing up in that space, and that's what you're growing up eating. Yes, you put value on that, and there's a connection to that. But as you grow up, we're really not doing ourselves many favors in how we diversify our palates and expose ourselves to new tastes, flavors, and I think that plays a role in like healthy eating. So if you don't know what granola tastes like. And you're never around it, you would never know that it has all types of nutrients, fiber, things that your body needs. Yeah. So it creates a nice space, not only where you're creating an environment and a good twist on cultural favorites, but also exposing people to new ways of experiencing dishes they've grown up with. So it's just something I do appreciate about your space specifically. When it came to actually opening up your business, so you were working in the food industry already, so you already had kind of a sense of how things were run, the number of people you need to make the business run. Can you walk us through what other steps you took to prepare yourself to open this business? Like I'm thinking, like somebody that wants to open up their own business, like to mentally prepare themselves, like working with the city, your support system, like how does all that work?
It's funny that I'm going to say it like this, but
go for it.
I had no business plan.
Okay. Oh, wow. Really? Oh, geez.
Nope, I didn't. I'm not going to lie. All I had was a menu that I sat down and did all the thinking that I had to do and did all the, taste testing and all that. That was as best as I got to a business plan. I didn't have money. I had a little bit of savings and that's what I used. But interesting story is that while I was working, in the field for so many years, I actually, Hector actually had came one day to my job, and he's like, hey, do you have a second? You should come downstairs. I want to talk to you real quick. I'm like, well, I'll take my break in about 5 minutes. I'll be there in a minute. So, whatever, 5 minutes came down. He comes and tells me, I want to open a business, right? And I'm looking at him like, okay, like, what does that have to do with me, And he said, I have an opportunity to start up with this amount of money, but it was a hair salon. And I looked at him like, a hair salon? Why would I want to open a hair salon? I don't do hair. I don't do none of that stuff, And he's like, yeah, but it's an easier way to make fast money, to do what we have to do, because opening a restaurant is very expensive, And I'm looking at him like, give me time to think about it. He's like, I'm being serious. I could go right now, get the keys. The landlord is off for it. And I'm like, we'll see. Long story short, I ended up giving in and I opened the business with him, During that year that we opened, I was still working as a chef, obviously, still, doing, because that was my bread maker to take care of my girls. He told me, okay, I think we should sell. I think we should be okay. I think, we can move to the next step. And I'm looking at him like, what's the next step? He's like, what do you want to do? Which was the restaurant. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'll think about it. I don't know. Because I really didn't want to do no partnership or none of that stuff. I was like, nah, I'll see, whatever. We sold it. He took his part. I took my part. It was what it was. But then it just kept going in my mind. And I remember not writing, but actually like putting these little notes together of like that menu that I mentioned, the hours, the name of the restaurant, how I was gonna decorate it, like one of those plans, but it wasn't even typed. It was literally just scrabbles. You know what I mean? Like,
was it
seriously,
on a napkin?
yeah. And seriously, I'm not lying to you. Those little pieces, I just put them inside that folder. Like, it was just one of those things. Which I still carry it, which I still save it, which is interesting, but I do. It's just a reminder. But I called Hector and I said, hey, we need to sit down and talk. And he's like, all right. So we went to go have breakfast. We're talking, and I told him all my business ideas or what I thought, I'm like, but I really know what I'm doing, but don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, well, I trust you and I believe in you. So just give me 2 days. Let me see if I can look for a location. He found a few to look at, but none was calling my attention. And I drove past here and I saw this. There was no for rent sign. There was no sign of anything. All I saw was people coming in to fix. So I called Hector because he's very, he'll go in there and ask. So he came and the door was open. He walks in, starts talking to the workers. The workers called the landlord and he started talking to us, showed us around. I told Hector, this is it. This is it. I see myself here. And then all this happened.
Wow.
So there was like no business plan. Like there was nothing. It was just one of those things that I just threw myself to do blindly. Then I ended up quitting my job. So I think quitting my job was the one that I was like, okay, I really need to get this going, because how am I going to support myself or my kids or the house for that matter, So, yeah, it was challenging. It was challenging because a lot of times I was scared, like, what the heck did I just do, But I went for it. And when people tell me, what advice you give me, go for it. Don't think about it so much. Because sometimes when you think about it too much, you won't do it.
Yeah. Like you overthink it.
Yeah, you won't do it.
In your head and just...
Because you'll convince yourself why you shouldn't do it.
Right.
Rather than why you should do it. So I really think that it helped that I was able to kind of like, and Hector's a daredevil. So he kind of like said, let's go for it. Let's do it. He never said no. So that didn't help. You have to have that. Right. Yeah, so he was my hype man, and then later I would tell him, why would you say yes to everything I tell you? Like, but I don't regret it at all.
I tell people this all the time. Like, I think BIPOC communities, that market in general, gets done such a disservice with wherever the powers that be are in society, when they think about a product or food, they don't think about, this market isn't going to gravitate towards that experience. It's just such a like low bar. But hearing from you, it sounds like something like is not really common growing up. I mean, I didn't know about the concept of like intimate dinners after closing time, or like having a whole space to yourself for a personal dinner until later in life. Like I didn't grow up in those spaces,
Right.
but I know I liked it as soon as I heard about it, and I would be down to throw some money in for that type of experience. So there's people that crave that.
Yeah, and especially because I am in Logan Square, and I say Humboldt Park because I'm like in the borderline of both, and I feel like our community deserves to see that our food is just as beautiful as our people.
Yes.
And our food keeps being ignored as a greasy bag and as a fast food. And it's like one of those things that it could be very aggravating and frustrating because no, we're not, or they want to eat a lot of food and instead of smaller portions or do this or do that. It's like, it's just this big stereotype, and surprisingly enough, and even, people come here and older people, and those are the ones that always scares me, because they have their mindset, I mean, not even to go that far. My own mother, sometimes she'll look at me like, don't you think that's too risky? Because she always tells me that, don't you think that's too risky? That's not how. And I'm like, Mom, taste it. And then when she tastes, she goes, it tastes the same. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point, we have to evolve, we can't, if we don't evolve, we would have been still in pagers and cell phone and texting, hello and highs and loves and bessels. Remember on the pagers, you had to put them upside down.
Oh yeah. Or hit the same button multiple times to get to the one you need.
But we have to evolve. So if that stuff evolves, why can our cuisine not evolve? Our food is good enough to evolve.
No, totally. And that's in the same type of vein as conversations we've had on the show about racism in produce. How a good example being, we know the value of our food. We know that it can be on par with a lot. We're in Logan Square. It's on par with a lot, if not better, than what you're going to get and what you're willing to pay for. Like avocado toast is like a big thing. People throw down big money for aguacate on some pan. It's like, what is this? This is out of this world. And yet Latinos, Puerto Ricanos, we had those big aguacates on La Isla. Like that was just something you get. And it would be a fair price as soon as, I'm just going to say it, as soon as white folk, affluent people hear about it, they really like that. They really are into avocado. All of a sudden, that dictates how much that aguacate is worth. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be the one. If that's a part of our culture, Mexicanos have a bunch of aguacates. Like if that's a part of our culture, we should be dictating the value of that. Because if anybody knows the true value of our food and our cuisine and our culture, it is us.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting, like hearing you say, like wanting to elevate it. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because we see that when we walk down the produce lines. I am hoping the powers that be, the affluent in our society, our white brothers and sisters do not get a hold of panas, because I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Because if they start replacing potato with panas, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to pay $10 for a pana.
It's over.
It's over. Hola, Joshua Smyser-DeLeon here, founder and host of the Paseo podcast. Thanks for listening to the show, where we highlight stories by, from, and about the Puerto Rican community, from La Isla to the diaspora. If you want to help us share the diverse and vibrant stories that make up the Puerto Rican communities here on Paseo, Boricua, and Chicago, and around the world, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribing helps more people find the show and will help you make sure you never miss an episode. Leaving a 5-star rating and showing some love in the comments helps too. You can also give a donation by looking up the Paseo podcast on savechicagomedia.org. Okay, that's enough from me. Enjoy the show. We're heading into holiday season. We're recording this a few weeks before the holidays. But in a couple weeks or a week or so, I'm trying to think when this episode airs. It's going to be Thanksgiving, right around the corner. We're talking Christmas or whatever other holiday people listening may celebrate in that span of time. But we're essentially rocking into the holiday season. What would be 2 to 3 recommendations of traditional Puerto Rican dishes with a healthier spin?
So I always tell people I'm not really the healthy eating or expert or nothing like
Sure,
that.
sure.
I love to indulge at times, and holidays is a great excuse to do what you want to do.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
make sure you work out afterwards, please.
I don't.
Drink a lot of water.
Okay, yeah, that I do too. Yeah.
Okay, so, but I always say, like, I think one of the biggest problem it's the carbs. Too much of it, it's a problem. They turn into sugar. And that causes diabetes a lot in our community, high blood pressure, cholesterol, and coronary heart disease. And I come from family that has all that. But I always say, like, if you do your pork, I mean, they always do their pork al horno, which is good, pernil al horno, but maybe indulge with that, but maybe do different type of sides. Like, the famous potato salad that we always do. Instead of using potato, maybe use turnips. Turnips are lower carbs. You can actually peel them, and in Spanish they're called nabos, and they actually get very forgotten, like ignored. People don't even know how they taste or even look like, Yeah. So, one of those things is just you peel it, dice it up exactly like a potato, boil it just like a potato, and exactly what you put on the potato salad, you add it on that turnip. And I mean, yeah, it's not going to taste exactly like potato, but it's going to mimic that. And you're going to have a healthier option with carb free, like you have especially if you have abuelito who has diabetes, he can have that potato salad, So, if you're going to do, the famous mastacholis, con la carne, la salsita, with cheese. Maybe get whole wheat pasta instead. Instead of using the beef, maybe use the turkey. There's also the vegan options where you can use soy. You can do ground soy, put that on there, or you could do shredded jackfruit and still do the salsita on there. There's always that option as well there. Pay attention to your tomato sauce when you buy in cans. That there's, no sugar. You don't really need the sugar in there. It's just for preservative. If you can make your own, even better. But yeah, I mean, just little things. I always say, I think it's more about the sides. Make sure there's a garden salad and not lettuce and tomatoes, people. Like an actual garden salad. Like add some arugula, some spinach, do spring mix on there. Add some, sunflower seeds on there, dry cranberries in there. Make an actual garden salad, because you eat with your eyes. And when that salad looks so colorful and you put aguacate in there, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to grab onto it and eat it. But if you just do lechuga and tomate, ain't nobody going to pick that. Because not even me. I will look at it and I'll skip it. Because there's nothing fun about iceberg lettuce and tomatoes. It's boring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think everything you shared are very attainable, easy for someone that may not cook regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very accessible, the options you shared, especially for people that want to be a bit more health conscious around the holidays, want to look out for abuelos, abuelas, especially considering like Puerto Ricans, you don't know if we're number one or we're definitely up there, but highest diabetic rate. So we need to start getting more healthier, more health conscious faster.
Yeah.
So no, I love those examples. Definitely coming with the garden mix salad. I'm making it.
Even some roasted vegetables.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't see that. Like sometimes you see a buffet and you see potato salad, mastacholi, the rice, the meat, the other meat, the other thing. And it's like, but there's no vegetables. There's no garden salad. Right. There's no, I mean, you could grab eggplant, cut it in half, take it out, stuff it, bake it in the oven, put it on, different things. Because believe it or not, when I cook at home for holidays, I do those options. Everything gets gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just our mentality as even parents, because we're at fault. Oh, no, eso no le gusta. Él no come eso. Él no come vegetales. And it's because we're already teaching our kids that, you don't really eat that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we as parents fail when we're raising our kids. They're picky eaters because it is your fault. I don't even want to hear it. They're picky eaters because it's your fault. Because in my house, my every time I cooked something, that garden salad was always there. And my kids always picked the garden salad, ate the whole thing before they even touched anything else. My
mom was the same. My mom would experiment all the time in the kitchen. a lot of times it was thumbs up. A lot of times it was thumbs down. What were you thinking, Mom, making this dish? You just kind of,
It happens.
freestyle. You freestyle. Not everything's a bullseye. But it doesn't mean it tastes bad.
Right.
But it's one of the things that I felt very privileged. My mom could throw down in the kitchen. She could make all the classics in terms of Puerto Rican food. But she was never afraid to mix it up, do a little fusion, get in some healthier options. Like that really exposed me to worlds of vegetables, fruits, and that happened at a young age. So I do think there's a lot of truth to that. What we pass down to the next generation. And
it's funny because my mom now, she's 67 years old and she's been vegan for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Which is crazy. I'm not vegan. I say I'm a vegan enthusiast, which means that most of my days I do eat vegan and I'll eat meat here and there, nothing crazy. But I love vegan food. Like, I mean, if it's cooked well, because there's some food that I'd be like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. Right. It happens. Yeah. But my mom actually was borderline diabetes. She has high blood pressure. She has cholesterol. And she was borderline heart attack, the doctor was like, okay, we're going to give you, you're going to drink a 3rd pill for the high blood pressure. You're drinking a 2nd pill for cholesterol, and you're going to come back in 3 months, and then we're going to check your blood work again. And she comes to me. She's like, my chest hurts so much. My back is killing me. And I'm just looking at her and I'm like, Mom, you know what it is? It's that animal product, too much of it. You got to cut it down. Yeah. That cholesterol pill, 2 pills, that's the thing. People don't understand. Doctors, when they go to school to learn, they learn medication.
Correct.
That's what their job is, to medicate you. They're not there to it's to put a Band-Aid. It's not actually to cure and you know what I mean? So, sure. One of the reasons why people that drink high blood pressure pills cannot have grapefruit is why. The grapefruit lowers your blood pressure. So you can't have that while you're drinking that pill. Why do you think? So why not drink that pill and eat the grapefruit?
Right.
It's an easy solution, but of course the pharmaceutical world is a whole different story. And that's what I told my mom. You need to kind of she said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I did, I think it was like maybe, I want to say for those 2 months, I did meal prep for her because she had no idea how to cook plant-based. Wow. Again, because she was used to cooking all the stuff that, Mommy, if you're making arroz con andule, you don't have to put pork in it.
Right. Our biology, we were not meant to eat meat as rapid of a clip as we do on a daily basis as a society. Like it was like you like run into something you could eat that was meat every few weeks, maybe once a week. If you were lucky.
Yeah.
And the rest was foraging. Like you're eating off the land, what's growing off of the plants. It's growing the roots that are growing in the ground. Like you weren't just at the snap of a finger, you'd have some pork in front of you. Like
no. And it was even during the whole colonization is when we got all that chicken and pork, and it had nothing to do with us. So when people say traditional cooking, I'm like, what is traditional cooking? No. I mean, if you're actually going to go back, there's a lot of stuff that we did not.
Yeah, you're right.
Was not supposed to be eating. Pork was one of them. So when I started telling her that, she's like, okay, I'm going to try. I'm like, just let me. And she's like, it's just because my mom is a very skinny lady. She's not even, she's not even obese or nothing. I mean, she's skinny. So people have that stereotype that if you're big, you're unhealthy, but if you're skinny, you're healthy type of thing. And it's not. And she tells me that's because it's hereditary. I'm like, you know what's hereditary? The bad eating habits. That's what's hereditary. And that's the reason why we're sick in our community, because we are collecting those eating habits from our parents and grandparents and tatarabuelos and, for generations. And that's why it doesn't change. So she's like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to listen to you. She was so mad because she didn't want to do it. Yeah. But to prove a point that it was hereditary, she said, she did it for 2 months. When she went back, nothing. Everything was gone. Wow. Within 10 days, that chest pain, gone. Okay, they did an ultrasound on her back liver because they actually have found like a stain. So she had to go back. When she went back, gone. It was just gone. Everything was. So she was supposed to do it only for 2 months, and 2 months turned into 6 months. And she tells me, sometimes she's like, oh, I miss this. Obviously, because, you have those taste buds still, So I always tell her, oh, well, we could do an alternative of it. and Hector's always cracking up when I say, oh, if you're craving that, oh, I can make that for you, and she looks at me like, okay, he starts laughing because, she's looking for an excuse, but it's not going to work because I could figure it out for her. Yeah. So, but, and, my father has coronary heart disease. So he actually did become about 8 years ago, he became pescatarian. So he does eat seafood, but he does a lot of vegetables, plant-based eating. Okay. And my dad lost like over 100 and something pounds, very fit, works out. And he had that surgery, I want to say 11 years ago, because he actually went into surgery and he's been healthy. Like he's been on it, So I do think food is power. Food is power. And it's like, how are we using that power? Do you know what I mean? Sure. So that's what I want. When I cook something that I want to elevate from both Honduras and Puerto Rico, I want it to be where when people eat it, it takes them to a memory. Because it defeats the purpose if I'm just giving you a dish just to give it to you to eat it. You know what I mean? Or just to make money off of you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, I want to profit because I still want to stay in business. But I also want it to be memorable. So to me, I'm very intentional on how I am producing, how I'm elevating, making sure that when you try that dish, it takes you back to a memory. Doesn't matter what it is, but it takes you to a memory where it's like, I remember 8 years ago, I think it was a month after opening. There's this lady that, she's amazing. I love her now. She became my family, you can say right now. Her name is Millie. She came here to eat with her sister and her brother-in-law, right? To try out because Mikey O was, Mikey O had came here the second day that we were open. And I was nervous because, he's very honest and he don't care,
Mm-hmm. And I was like, put you in a stand-up routine.
Yeah, I'm like, second day, he's going to come and try my food. Oh my God, this is going to be a mess, But he came in and then, he loves flan and I have flan de coco. So, but he ended up loving it. So he promoted it, right? So the lady came to try the food, but she had the piñón, the pastelón, right? She comes and starts to talk to Hector because Hector was serving her. Hector goes back there and he kind of looked like he wanted to cry. And he goes, you need to go to table 3. The lady wants to talk to you. And I looked at him and I'm like, what happened? I'm like, oh my God, I'm mortified. Like, oh my God, what happened, And he's like, just go, it's nothing bad, just go. And I'm like, okay. So I go up to her. I'm like, hi, I'm the chef. She's like, very nice to meet you. So she introduced herself, her sister and her brother-in-law. And then she's like, I have a question for you. And I go, sure, One of her tears comes out and she goes to me, do you have my mom cooking back there? And I was just like, what do you mean? She's like, I haven't had piñón in years since my mom passed away. And I promise you that it tastes just like hers. And look, I say it and I still get teary about it. To me, that was like the best compliment that I've received in 8 years owning my restaurant. To this day. So when I do these dishes, they're very intentional. I want to take you to that space again. I want to take you to that memory that brings that connection, because like I said earlier, food is power. Food is power. It speaks to you without language.
Hearing you share that story, I felt that. I mean, I can only imagine what it feels like to lose a parent. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine what it feels like after losing that parent to be transported to a memory of them. And if even a bite of your food can transport someone there, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is.
It's powerful. Mm-hmm. I don't think that would be possible without the intentionality you put in your dishes. And I've only been here once, but talking to you, I'm like, man, I'm getting a little teary-eyed. Because I did
too right now. I'm telling you.
You're good. But and I think you're right. Food is power.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It connects us to our ancestors.
Yes.
To people we've never met before, people that we've known in our lives. There's definitely a lot of power in there. Hola, Joshua Smyser-DeLeon here, founder and host of the Paseo podcast. Thanks for listening to the show, where we highlight stories by, from, and about the Puerto Rican community, from La Isla to to the diaspora. If you want to help us share the diverse and vibrant stories that make up the Puerto Rican communities here on Paseo, Boricua, in Chicago, and around the world, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribing helps more people find the show and will help you make sure you never miss an episode. Leaving a 5-star rating and showing some love in the comments helps too. You can also give a donation by looking up the Paseo podcast on savechicagomedia.org. Okay, that's enough from me. Enjoy the show. I don't know if you watched the Olympics, the Tokyo Olympics, but Jasmine Camacho Quinn brought us our second gold medal, I believe, for Puerto Rico. She did not have to represent Puerto Rico.
Yep.
She could have easily won a medal for the U.S.
Yep.
But after she won, great accomplishment. You saw all this chatter. Is she really Puerto Rican? People challenging her Boricua card. She doesn't speak Spanish fluently. She wasn't born in La Isla. How could she possibly represent us? As if there aren't 5 million Puerto Ricans here and 3 million on the island. As if we weren't pushed out of the island because it's just too hard to live, to live on La Isla.
Right.
It's factors out of our control. And but even with that, we're still Puerto Rican just because the land shift doesn't change our roots, right? So, you're half Puerto Rican, half Honduran. What does being Honduran, Puerto Rican mean to you?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised here in Chicago, and my dad is from Honduras and my mom from Puerto Rico, and I was actually raised in Humboldt Park. But it actually, there were times that was hard because people did pull out you're not 100% Puerto Rican, because they knew I was Honduran, or really, you don't look Puerto Rican.
Right. Like, what does that mean? You don't look Puerto Rican.
Right. I always got I don't think you look Puerto Rican. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, all right, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a way of looking, but but it happens where it's like you should know that when you have two cultures, it can be hard sometimes because you might not be, for me, I wasn't maybe Puerto Rican enough or I wasn't Honduran enough, because I had the mix, but I always tell people, 50 plus 50 equals 100. So I'm 100% Latina. And that's what I represent, being Latina, being Puerto Rican for me and Honduran, it's about representing and how I'm walking and what I'm doing. I was born and raised here, but I own a restaurant, a business that I'm showcasing both my parents' culture. And it means everything to me. It means the world to me because I have to talk about where my mom is from. I have to talk about where my dad is from. I have that connection. Even if you try to reject it, you can't. It's in your DNA. It's in your blood. I go to Honduras and I talk in Spanish and my cousins are laughing because you sound so Puerto Rican, And then I go to Puerto Rico, you sound so Honduran. It's like, okay, I guess. Yeah. But I'm speaking Spanish, so it doesn't even matter, right? At that point. But es un orgullo, I can't, it's hard to put it into words, but it's just a feeling that, I've always told people it's about representing, you're representing that culture, you're representing that, and the way you represent it is how you walk, how you talk, what you do, and like you said, she didn't have to represent Puerto Rico, but she did. So she has it in her blood, she has it in her heart. And that's something that I always tell you. I always tell people, like, I don't have to be born or raised at those countries to appreciate the value of that culture, appreciate how I was raised. I was raised by a Puerto Rican woman, a strong Boricua, I learned everything from her, from cooking, from educating, from discipline. I tell my mom all the time, I'm a great mom because you were a great mom, She was born and raised in Puerto Rico and she's raising me. So guess what? That makes me Puerto Rican because all her personality, all her thinking, everything was through her culture. How she learned is how she's teaching me. Same thing goes with my father. The way he learned, the way he did that to me as well. I was very close to my grandmother from my dad's side more than I was with my mom because my mom's side had 14 brothers and sisters. So they were like a huge family. So it was kind of hard for my grandparents to remember all the grandkids' name. And it was versus when my father was a smaller family, it was only 2 more siblings. So it was more smaller. And I was the first granddaughter born. So you can only imagine how spoiled I was with my grandmother. So, but that made me feel very Honduran because my grandmother, vente, vamos a hacer un pescado con coco, ahí, cooking fish with coconut, with the coconut milk. Or, my chimichurri sauce that I learned it from her. It's stuff like that. Like, I feel like you have that connection that it's hard to ignore it because it's just there. It's in your face. It's your everyday living, So yeah, I don't think you have to speak Spanish to be very Puerto Rican or very Honduran or being born in those places to be that, It's that connection that you already have in your DNA. It's there, It's hard to put into words, but it's there. It's a feeling,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And just even as you were talking, like I was picking up on like, oh man, mi familia does the same thing. My mom will go through 5 other guys' names in our family before she gets to mine. She go Junior, Pito, Joshua. I'm like, I'm your first son. I'm the first
I
one.
have 2 kids and I go through that.
Oh my God.
It's just one of those things.
It's one of those things. Well, no, I don't take it personal. It's just
Yeah.
it's just funny,
Yeah.
So I just appreciate the similarity.
Yeah.
So I would, as the last question I had, because we've definitely overstayed our welcome. How can people keep up with your business? What's your website? What's your social media channels? Give us everything.
So my website is www.casayari.com. Everything is there, from, menus. Even I have a little online store that I sell my own products. And you can follow me on Instagram, also Casa Yari, Facebook, Casa Yari as well.
Great. Okay. Yari Vargas, thank you so much for being on the Paseo podcast.
I appreciate you very much.
Loved having you on. Thank you for opening up your space.
Thank you.